What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. Not with me as always, super producer Brandon Newman on vacation. Shout out to Drew and Isaiah holding it down here this week with us. And not with me as always, my father, Mike Golick Sr., who is now off and beginning his journey out in Tahoe at the American Century Classic. He's getting ready to go do the golf thing. And so he's got to get locked in for that today. I think we just showed. Wait, can we pull that back up? So peek behind the curtain here. In the program we use to run this show for anyone, and as we have a great show today, download, subscribe, rate, review, 5-star rating. Check us out on DraftKings YouTube so you can see my father's frozen face as every day when I log in to do this show, my dad's face, confused, looking at the camera as he starts his computer, is frozen there in time on this program. And so today, Dad is not with us. He's out there getting ready to golf. I think they've got some sort of like beginning round today out in Tahoe, but his frozen face is hanging out with me here in the chat. So, Dad, we miss you. It's comforting to have this little weird frozen version of you that we can actually control here. So we'll see if we can make up some quotes to weirdly attribute to my dad's frozen face as the show goes along. But we'll have Dad back tomorrow so we can check in on how the proceedings have gone. For anyone that's watched over on the Dan Le Batard show, which you can do here on the DraftKingsNetwork.com after us, Stugotz, Mike Ryan, and Jeremy Taché are already out in Tahoe getting the groundwork set so that when we get out there, we'll be good to go. We will have updates on Stugotz's pursuit of caddying for my dad on Friday and all the mess going on there. But with all that in mind, it's going to be a solo GoJo show today. We do have a cool treat, though, coming up on the show today. In addition to the bombshell article dropped by Seth Wickersham and Don Van Natta over at ESPN concerning the Washington Commanders team sale, Daniel Snyder, John Gruden, and everything that went down with the situation involving the leaked emails that ultimately led to Daniel Snyder's demise. Again, the most terrifying force in the world and the most terrifying sight around your facility has to be when Seth Wickersham starts poking around. Because if Seth Wickersham's walking around your building, ain't nothing fun getting written about you. I can assure that. So we've got that to certainly get to. But we've also got the fellas from the Cooligans podcast stopping by over at DraftKings Network as well, under Meadowlark Media as well. Talk to those guys as we're getting ready for the Women's World Cup coming up very soon. This show is going to be dark all of next week, by the way. We are going to be off next week, taking some vacation before the NFL season gets going. And so wanted to get into a little bit of this right now as we've got the U.S. Women's National Team going out in what could be a more competitive field than we have seen in quite some time. The world rising up around us and starting to kind of close the gap a little bit, but also get to know a lot of the new faces on the U.S. Women's National Team. 14 first-time members at the world stage going and being involved in the World Cup on the U.S. side. So it'll be very cool there. The guys from the Cooligans are a ton of fun. If you haven't checked out that podcast, please do. You'll get a little taste of them with us, and I can assure you, you're going to want more coming off that. So very excited to get to all that as the show goes along. But we did have Major League Baseball's All-Star game last night. We spent a lot of time talking about the Home Run Derby the other day. And obviously, if you want baseball stuff, baseball is dead. Jared and those guys are going to do a much better job covering it than we are. But I do have to say, fun game overall. We had the National League actually win the All-Star game for the first time since 2012. They win by a final score of 3-2. According to MLB stats, the last time the National League won the All-Star game back in 2012, Bryce Harper and Mike Trout were appearing in their first All-Star game. Derek Jeter had led the league in hits at age 38. There were 3 perfect games that year. Gio Gonzalez led the league in wins with 21, and Carlos Correa had just gone number 1 in Major League Baseball's draft. So it's been a while, and they finally got over on that. The biggest thing I took away from this as we went through the proceedings, number 1, Major League Baseball's All-Star game, probably of the All-Star games that we've got going on right now, is the best one remaining. It's the one that gives you, I think, the closest to competitive action just because it's harder to fake the funk over on baseball because pitchers and hitters control so much of the action. It's not like the NBA and the NFL where no one plays defense, no one's trying to get hurt. Hockey's a little bit of the same. That one probably a little bit more untouched, but Major League Baseball gives you the product that's actually closest. And in this game, we get the better access because now we removed the stakes from this game for a long time, having the idiotic tie to home field advantage in the World Series, which was one of the dumber things that I could think of happening. Thank God they went away from that. But now, because of the lower stakes of this game, you get mic'd up moments and all the access that can come with the structure of baseball. To me, it's the most competently executed all-star game that we have in pro sports right now. And while it won't necessarily drive me to watch more baseball, it will get me to comment on how fun it was to hear from Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts both mic'd up together. Would sign up for the buddy cop comedy of both of those guys in a heartbeat. That was electric content. We had a batter and a hitter mic'd up at the same time. I think that was Uvalde mic'd up. I struggled with that one because while it was cool to see him and then the batter mic'd up at the same time, doing that to a pitcher in the middle of a game seems like the one guy to maybe not mess with because there's so much thought that has to go on in there. Now you got the pitch clock factored in, and he's the closest to the action when the ball comes back off the bat. So I thought maybe we could leave the pitchers out of it, having the guys in the infield. Still, you had them kind of on edge, but most of these guys were good enough personalities to deal with it. We had the wonderful moment where they showed Shohei Ohtani coming to the batter's box in this game, and the entire Seattle crowd was basically lobbying for him there. Also, shout out to Freeman and Mookie Betts for both when asked about Shohei Ohtani, understanding that the league is listening and that tampering is apparently still real for some people, and they weren't going to get caught up, but that Seattle crowd making it abundantly clear they wanted Shohei to come to Seattle, as that hung in the balance over the entire proceedings in the All-Star game. The other thing with the All-Star game that gets me is it gives me major chain envy. I have never been and will probably never be able to pull off wearing a gaudy necklace or any sort of jewelry, but watching the going through this game, incredible chains the entire way. I think I saw Ronald Acuna had the too small celebration of him out at second base turned into a diamond chain. That's some cool stuff you can only do when you're Ronald Acuna, not when you're Mike Golic Jr. And so thus concludes our compelling coverage of Major League Baseball's All-Star game. Again, for more on that, make sure you hit up the guys over at Baseball is Dead. What I want to get to here is something that popped up quickly yesterday and involves who else but a sitting U.S. senator, as we had the hearings going on the U.S. Senate concerning the PGA Tour and LIV merger. This was an antitrust-based Senate, a bunch of stuff that people don't probably want to hear about anymore. We've had enough legalese this week, but you had the quiet part get said super loud as Senator Rand Paul took to the microphone to extol the virtues of antitrust laws.
The court ruled unanimously that the NCAA can't invoke their rules. And so they've completely screwed up college athletes. We used to be proud. Many of us loved watching amateur athletes that weren't paid. Now everybody that plays basketball in college is going to be driving a Bentley or a Rolls. I mean, we're going to be seeing rap stars instead of basketball stars. I mean, this is crazy. But you know why it happened? Because Congress sat around and said, oh, well, because of antitrust, we can't let the NCAA do it. It went to the court, and the court made the ruling, unfortunately, a unanimous ruling based on the law.
Who that dog whistle is singing loudly during the course of that testimony. And so, again, this starts off with different lawmakers operating or arguing for or against antitrust laws as it pertains to the PGA LIV merger. It then veers very quickly into a conversation about the most other public showing of antitrust laws on display that Rand Paul mentioned there, which was the NCAA getting bodied in the courts when it came to the idea of player rights. And I always struggle with wanting to give these things too much air because some people are catering to a base. I never know how much to ascribe, but I'll take Rand Paul at his words because those are not so thinly veiled bits of racism making their way into the conversation about student athlete rights. And I hate even using that term, and I mistakenly do from time to time. The thing that struck me about this, though, is what he said there about the idea of enjoying watching players that you know aren't making money struck a chord with me because it was always my fear in covering college athletics when we would have these conversations before NIL stuff about pay for play and the idea of athletes getting a piece of the pie. Is I was always worried because I felt like this sentiment was never too far from the surface when people would argue in favor of the virtues of amateurism, when people would talk about how much that idea meant to them, why they enjoyed watching the college game versus the pro game. I always thought there was a little tinge of, well, we like knowing that we got money and they don't. At least these people who have incredible ability and more of it than we could ever dream of, who are getting an education paid for by the school, at least they can't make any money. At least we got that over on them. And oh, by the way, the vast majority of the players playing football and basketball are black and brown. And so there's that dynamic at play too. And so it felt like a lot of this there. I was encouraged as we've gone along with the NIL proceedings and we've seen the money essentially turn into a pay-for-play system in college sports, that I have seen and heard less of that sentiment than I expected to be there. I was heartened by that publicly, and that's not to say that there aren't people that still feel this way privately or who say it much less aggressively, right? It pops up in other ways. It's usually not stated this explicitly. Rand Paul did us that favor of saying the quiet part extremely loud, but overall points back to this idea that I think there was always a faction of people that did enjoy the fact that they at least had that leverage. But despite the words from the senator here, and listen, I'll take him at his word that these are the way he feels, and that is how he views the young people playing this game, which do with that what you will. But I do remain encouraged, at least anecdotally from my vantage point, that I have heard a lot less of that perspective as we've gone forward into the new world of college athletes being able to get some coin. I guess if I were a good host also off the top of the show, I would have mentioned that the other usual member that you were used to hearing on Wednesday is also not with us today, our dear friend Charlotte Wilder. As I got a text from my mom going, "Where's Charlotte?" Charlotte is still out in Vegas covering Summer League with Amin El Hassan. You can check out their new podcast, Oddball, over at Meadowlark Media. Our wonderful friend of the show, Charlotte Wilder, who's had her nebulous project being teased with the folks at Meadowlark for a while now, got it unveiled. Her and Amin have been doing some awesome stuff out at Summer League that you've probably seen show up on the Levitard Show coverage. So support our friend Charlotte. She will be back here with us soon. Summer League's presented some complications scheduling-wise, and so I don't think we're going to get her this week. But again, Oddball with Amin El Hassan and Charlotte Wilder. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Enjoy yourself. What will surely be one of the more unique basketball podcasts that you will consume. We will get to shortly our interview with the fellas over at the Cooligans podcast as well. But wanted to touch on this briefly, and we mentioned it off top. Seth Wickersham and Don Van Natta wrote an exhaustively detailed piece documenting the entire fall and the beginning of the end of Daniel Snyder's tenure with the Washington Commanders, going all the way back to the leaked John Gruden emails and how they set into motion the course of action that would ultimately land Daniel Snyder on the outside looking in from NFL ownership. I encourage everyone to read it. Seth and Don always do phenomenal work, and this is no exception. But there were a few things that stuck out because the article is essentially positioned as a whodunit for the email leak that ultimately became the beginning domino to fall in this procession, right? We've now gotten to the end result we all wanted, which was Daniel Snyder no longer as a member of the NFL. But remember, at the time, these email leaks were the biggest story in sports. I remember watching the Monday Night Football game between, I believe, the Raiders and the Colts when this news originally broke and John Gruden's future in the NFL all of a sudden started to become clouded, and everything in between, from the rest of the emails that were all part of a look into an investigation into the Washington Commanders' toxic workplace culture, the disappearance of those emails, the lack of the Wilkerson report on the Commanders ever being made public, all of these things that sort of lied in the shadows. And this article starts to flesh out some of the players in this and what the motivations may have looked like. So again, it's presented as this whodunit. Who would have leaked these emails and why? They positioned three people as potential culprits for this. Top NFL executives, including Roger Goodell, as the potential source, D. Smith, the former head of the NFL Players Association, and Daniel Snyder himself, aided by his New York law firm Reed Smith and company there, along with Desiree Perez, who is one of the heads of Rock Nation. Perez and Reed Smith, by the way, had their background in helping Alex Rodriguez in his pursuit and his pushback against Major League Baseball years ago that factors into all of this. And the point of this article was to point out that if it were in fact Daniel Snyder, which reading through this article and hearing the different sources and different ways that it's positioned, it certainly makes at least me draw the conclusion that Daniel Snyder and his camp would be the ones so bold as to leak this, but ending up hoisted by their own petard on here, according to a source who said without these leaks, he might just have survived. Because when you see in this, the other thing that becomes clear is a lot of people that looked at Daniel Snyder's original punishment after the original investigation into the Washington Commanders and thought, this seems a little light. Him just having to go away from the team for a nebulous amount of time, pay a little bit of a fine that is chump change relative to the amount of money that he's got in there, on and on down the list, as that Washington team then turned the reins over to Jason Wright, their team president. Ron Rivera is the head coach, being the public facing arm of this. Tanya Snyder taking over day-to-day operations. If it seemed a little light, they point out in this, that's because they believe that Daniel Snyder was able to influence the terms of his suspension using something referred to as the blackmail PowerPoint, where apparently Daniel Snyder and his leadership team or legal team presented a PowerPoint that contained, instead of compelling information backing up their client, tweets and other examples of documents and emails that were meant to essentially be a threat to everyone in the room involved, to the league office, to show them they had the dirt on them. That same dirt that Daniel Snyder would later claim to have on all the other owners in the NFL as he felt the walls closing in on him. It became known in league circles as the blackmail PowerPoint. But according to this article, seemed to have some bit of sway and some bit of effect on what went down. But you go through this, and it seems that the motive of Daniel Snyder looking at this situation involving him and his tenuous grasp on the team as time went on, saying, well, I've got a known bad relationship between John Gruden and the commissioner, Roger Goodell, that's documented in this article. Because remember, John Gruden was calling Monday Night Football before, when all these emails were sent, before he went back into coaching with the Raiders. I've got a known documented bad relationship with John Gruden and Roger Goodell I could exploit. Emails tied back to Bruce Allen, the former executive in Washington, who Daniel Snyder could then pin all of the toxic workplace issues on him as a scapegoat through these emails, backing up to this, which all makes enough sense to me, right? Assuming Daniel Snyder to be the criminal mastermind behind most of what's gone on is probably the right way to go, considering what we know about that particular actor in this. But it did bring me to one particular exchange between Gruden and Snyder that I found particularly hilarious, because it's hard to realize you're being used as sort of a pawn in somebody else's game. We've all got a bit of main character syndrome. And so when John Gruden recounts back and wonders what he could have done to Daniel Snyder to deserve this, knowing full well this was never about Gruden, he was likely a means to an end in this, it goes back to this exchange that Gruden recounts where he bumped into Snyder. This is from the article. Snyder, some years earlier, Snyder had bumped into Gruden at a restaurant. Gruden believes Snyder was drunk, and he and Gruden started playfully trash talking, with Snyder calling Gruden fat and Gruden saying he might, quote, dribble his head into the asphalt. Both men laughed, but Gruden wondered if Snyder had taken offense. Playful trash talk. Only in John Gruden's world would that be considered playful trash talk. Gee, I wonder if he felt some type of way about that as both of these dudes snarled their way through that. Yeah, me and all my boys sit around and call each other fat and then threaten to bounce each other's head off the asphalt there. The most quintessentially John Gruden bit of playful trash talk I could have possibly heard of, but I'd imagine in no way actually led to this going down. So again, make sure you go check out Seth Wickersham and Don Van Natta's piece on everything surrounding the leaked emails that ultimately led to the firing of John Gruden and the eventual ousting of Dan Snyder. There's a lot to get into on that too. The playbook that people believe Dan Snyder and company used that was similar to what A-Rod did, but through the first reading, because there's a lot in there, I will walk away with this hilarious visual of John Gruden believing threatening to bounce someone's head or dribble someone's head off the asphalt as he encountered what he believed to be a drunk Dan Snyder outside of a restaurant, that he believes that is like playful banter and trash talk. Like for John Gruden, I'd imagine roughhousing with his friends is the equivalent of stabbing each other based on that. It's, again, the main character syndrome we had all sometimes suffered from, as John Gruden's trying to sit around figuring out what he could have done to deserve this from Dan Snyder, as if Dan Snyder actually cared enough about John Gruden to make that happen, and thinking, man, I probably shouldn't have told the egocentric billionaire that I was going to bounce his head off the asphalt. Little bit too much football guy mixed in there, but we'll wait and see. Speaking of football guy, we got the breaking news announcement during the show. The Jets are officially selected by NFL and NFL Films to be the Hard Knocks team this year. They report to training camp July 19th, and the cameras will be rolling. We said all along, while the Jets didn't seem to have any interest in actually being the Hard Knocks team, the NFL was having a hard time getting anyone to buy into it this year. They were the obvious answer. Team that met the qualifications of being bad enough to be forced into this and just happened to trade for the future Hall of Famer at quarterback this offseason. It was all there. And I truly think while some NFL teams go into this resistant, there aren't as many, Mike Tomlin quote, "We want volunteers, not hostages." There aren't many teams as volunteery as the Detroit Lions were last year. I still think ultimately the camera and microphone access is going to be too much for Aaron Rodgers to resist. I think the rest of this team, with guys like Sauce Gardner, who we just saw as part of a defensive back melee on Twitter yesterday, as Sauce Gardner and CJ Gardner-Johnson and Asante Samuel all got involved. Darrelle Revis chimed in. There was a Twitter Spaces as defensive backs were just tearing each other apart online, past and present. I would say there's going to be enough personalities to be able to make this happen. But while we're talking about Hard Knocks, why don't we talk about our friends over at Knock Around right now? Because as you get ready for a summer strapped in watching the Jets go to training camp, you can also get into a great pair of shades that aren't going to have to be babied or cared for or primped or pampered. Knock Around sunglasses are the go-to for quality, polarized shades that won't break the bank. Plus, they just released their first 9 teams of their official MLB collection, including the Red Sox, the Yankees, as well as the official U.S. Women's National Team sunglasses, so you can add a little extra something to your game day outfit for the summer's big matches. Don't be the person squinting into the sun or worried about getting sand on their overpriced sunglasses. Head over to knockaround.com and get great-looking polarized sunglasses that start at just $28. And with that in mind, as we get ready for the Women's World Cup, and again, I'm going to have my knockarounds ready to go for that. We had a cool chance yesterday, so we recorded this interview a couple days ago, me and Dad, with Alexis Guerrero and Christian Polanco over at the Cooligans podcast to kind of start to look ahead, because as we mentioned, this is a Women's World Cup that's really kind of a changing of the guard. You've got, certain retirements, people coming up on their last couple here. Megan Rapinoe announced her retirement after this World Cup from both the national team and the NWSL. You've got youngsters upcoming here. And as always, we kind of want to know, where do we need to put our eyes? Who are our biggest threats and challengers? And who are the stars in the Stars and Stripes that we're going to get to watch? So here's our interview with the fellas over at the Cooligans podcast, getting you ready for the upcoming Women's World Cup. All right, very excited for this as we are nearing the start of the Women's World Cup. I have so much blue and gold from our trip to Colorado Springs out at the Olympic training center. Blue and gold. God, Notre Dame colors. I have so much red, white, and blue from our trip to Colorado Springs at the Olympic. I don't know which country I've now accidentally aligned myself with for the World Cup. We can ask for help from our friends. You guys know them from the Cooligans podcast over at Meadowlark Media here on DraftKings Network. Our friends Alexis Guerrero and Christian Polanco joining us now to help get us ready. Do we know, is there a country that is represented by blue and gold in their colors that I have now mistakenly aligned myself with as a fan?
I think you're now representing Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Yeah.
I believe.
Boy,
So
if
countries.
Yeah, if that's the case, then our odds are really, really bad on this one. We're in a hell of a lot of trouble. Let's stick with the Notre Dame blue and gold. Jeez.
Also, I think international sports, I know it's not something you guys cover in the sports you typically cover, but you just can't say red, white, and blue because you might be rooting for North Korea.
Right.
You got to say Stars and Stripes.
Or France,
My God,
That is
I
true.
do that on Twitter. I'm going to get canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to go Stars and Stripes.
All right, so we've already got our first bit of learning done for today. It is Stars and Stripes from here on out. I've got boatloads of those. This is not the world's first pro North Korea podcast coming out of America. Rest assured. So you have arrived at the right place to get ready if you are interested in the Stars and Stripes or any of what's coming up in general, guys. So just for you guys, what is the excitement level at right now getting ready for the Women's World Cup? This is traditionally something we've dominated, I think, as general fans of American sports. We've been used to this as our ace in the hole where we can show up and know we're going to kind of kick everyone's teeth in. So where are we at with the women's national team and our usual preferred dominance over the rest of the world?
We're at a place where right now there's a little bit of turnover, a lot of younger players. We're seeing players like Ashley Sanchez, Trinity Rodman, obviously Dennis Rodman's daughter, who scored 2 goals yesterday against Wales. We're at a place where I think every single Women's World Cup, we go in expecting to win, but not necessarily shocked if we don't. So right now, my main concern from a tactical level is we only brought 2 center backs. We only have 2 central defenders. And then Vlatko Andonovski, our head coach, is going to kind of just figure stuff out, mix and match, and find players that can play in that position from time to time.
In other words, the car doesn't have a spare tire. so it's a little scary.
So but we have such strong attacking talent that I think we're going to overpower a lot of teams offensively. So that's where I'm at right now.
I'm telling you, that is a great analogy for the casual fan like us. That's something I can hang on to. I mean, I just got that visual. I'm like, okay, all right, well, depth may be an issue here. All right, so I got it. Well done by you guys. So let me piggyback that with, I believe there are 14 first-year World Cup women on this team. So of those, again, as the casual fan watching this, how many of those 14 are like very, very instrumental that we're counting on?
I would say that if you made it onto this team, you're wildly instrumental. This is it's a very difficult task to come up with a roster for the women's national team because we are so high skilled in most of the positions. So we have a lot of versatile players as well. It's the younger players have to sort of cement themselves. Christian mentioned Dennis Rodman's daughter, Trinity Rodman. Trinity Rodman is an incredible player, but is she the starter? Not just yet, but based on the way she played in the last match, it looks like she would. The way this feels right now, it feels like the dream team, but like imagine if they made the dream team the year Jordan started playing with the Wizards. You'd be like, all right, maybe he shouldn't be the starter right now.
Right.
And there's a lot of kids that are really good.
Right, because
it's that level.
There's players like Megan Rapinoe who we know and love, and we've seen her year after year. She obviously won.
She's 38, though.
Yeah, exactly. There's certain players that
most of the assists you're going to have is handing out orange slices to the younger kids on this team. I hope.
But that's kind of it. Like it's going to be an opportunity for these young players to shine. I mean, one of my concerns, we had some injuries right before the World Cup to Becky Sauerbrunn, the center back, and then
who was our captain,
and then Mallory Swanson, who's married to Dansby Swanson of the Cubs, by the way.
Yep.
And really bad injuries to players that were like really in form and doing really, really well. So that's where I'm fearful that we don't have those exact players to step up, because now the players are going to have to step up, and they're not necessarily in the great form that we had those players that that were just injured. So that's where I get a little bit nervous, but I still kind of expect a U.S. women's national team in the final, because again, we have such versatile players. We have a lot of the players play in the National Women's Soccer League, and I will still say it's the best league in the world for women's soccer.
But the counterpoint to that is it's a lot like the NBA, where if you look at the draft, there's a lot of names you couldn't pronounce on teams you've never heard of in Europe. Because of the internet, because of how good this women's national team is, we've inspired a lot of people to get better. And I'm like, yo, you need to chill with that. This used to be our thing.
Slow it down.
Yeah, can you pull back on being so good, Europe? So a lot of the European nations have really started to invest heavily in the women's game in an effort, one, to stop the U.S. from being the dominant force, but they've kind of started to catch up. Spain, I'm looking at Spain is looking like a good team.
Yeah.
France, it was really tough for us to beat. They were the team that we had to sort of go against that were considered our main competition. England, all of a sudden, are an incredible squad. They're missing some big players, but they too are dangerous. Because we're in a transition, because we're going from a golden era to this new era that we're hoping, like Christian said, someone steps up and really takes the reign and says, this is my squad, and starts shining. Because we're in that mode, there's an opportunity that one of these European teams could sneak in.
Yeah.
God, hoisted by our own petard right now, the victims of our own success and making everybody else gun at us this hard. You mentioned some of the teams that are going to be the U.S.'s chief competition in this, but you also mentioned looking for that next group to step up. If you had to kind of bet right now, looking at this young crop of American talent, on who you thought the next star potential player is that could emerge through this World Cup, who would you guys circle on the sheet right now?
I got to say Sophie Smith. She plays for
I'll have a different name
for the Portland Thorns. She is
she's a baller.
Just scoring a bunch of goals. She's we were at the NWSL final last year when Portland Thorns won, and she scored early in that game as well.
Her goal celebration is great. She shrugs her shoulders and does this like,
Jordan,
damn, I'm good. You know,
nice little Jordan shrug. She's gonna. I think I would expect golden ball. Probably for her, meaning
which is score the most goals.
I think she's probably the best attacker in the entire tournament. So that's the name I'm circling because I think she's going to really, really stand out.
I think two different names I'm going to throw at you. I'm going to say Trinity Rodman again. Shows that has this thing about her that she does something spectacular every time she's on the ball. And she's just someone who, like, I don't know what it is about her game, but she can score a goal. It makes the way she scores it makes it a highlight you want to watch. So she's absolutely spectacular. And the other name I'm going to say is Ashley Sanchez, just someone who may be getting opportunities because Rose Lavelle, an incredible midfielder on our team, is injured, starting to come back. We don't know if she's going to be healthy in time or when she gets healthy within this competition. So it was a risk to bring her in and put her on the roster because she really hasn't played for her domestic team. But Ashley Sanchez, if she gets a chance to start, this Ashley Sanchez, I'm telling you now, buy stock in Trinity Rodman or Ashley Sanchez because they are superstars.
And they're both teammates also. They play on the Washington Spirit. So I would expect a lot from both of them as well.
So looking at this from what kind of a groove do they get into as this tournament starts? Group E, they're with Vietnam, Portugal, and Netherlands. Netherlands, I think, is plus 1,600 while the U.S. are the favorite. Then what is it? Portugal at plus 10,000 and Vietnam plus 50,000.
Right.
You know,
put your money on Vietnam.
I was going to say, yeah, if you want to lose, or just give it to me because it's the same thing you're losing.
There, baby.
So what do you do during this group play? We should obviously we're the favorite to win this whole thing. How do you play these first few games? Do you get everybody involved? Where you work on the rotation? What's kind of the strategy?
I'll say it's a little dangerous to suggest to rest players. I know, like, our first thought is, well, we should be able to. But the thing is that the other team that we should be competing against, which is Netherlands in this group, will be playing their best players against some of these smaller nations that, you're going to score a lot of goals on. And it's not just the points. You win 3 points for every win, and you get a point for every draw. But it's the goal differentials next. So how many more goals you score than the other team. So they can rack up their goal differential, potentially usurp you within that group. So you want to finish top of the group because then you play a second place finisher from another group. So typically you would expect an easier matchup in that first round of the knockout stages.
Yeah, and then Netherlands in that group stage, Netherlands is going to be obviously the toughest game. Netherlands played against the U.S. in the final of the 2019 World Cup. So there's going to be some kind of
there's motivation
for some revenge there, and Netherlands have a very good squad as well.
So basically what you're saying, because of goal differential, we just try and kick everybody's teeth in.
As many teeth as you can.
Yeah. That's why.
Yeah, like you're a dentist and you owe a lot of bad people money. You got to kick in a lot of teeth.
Well, this is why. And we can just get ahead of it. We can just get ahead of it now because in the last World Cup when the U.S. played against Thailand and won like 11-0,
15-0,
50, whatever it was, everybody was like, "Oh, they shouldn't be. They should a mercy rule. They shouldn't be trying to score. Well, should they be celebrating goals like that?" Yes, they're going to watch again against Vietnam. We should expect a lot of goals against them, and they're going to celebrate. It's a World Cup.
Right.
Shut up. Goal differential is important.
Yeah.
So stop complaining.
Terrell Owens celebrated every touchdown.
Hey, man. Hey, listen, you get the chance to stun on somebody on the national stage like that, you take the opportunity and you run with it. I don't think any of us would do any differently in this. Hopefully that does mean a lot of orange slices getting handed out very happily on the sideline by Megan Rapinoe. Then you guys mentioned before, going to be more in that role of the veteran player supporting the cause here. Obviously, she announced that she, after this World Cup, is going to be retiring both from the NWSL and from the national team. As best you guys can, and I know this is almost an impossible task, is there a way to sum up what she has meant to this U.S. program during her tenure?
A leader, sort of mouthpiece for the team, someone who supported younger players on the way up, someone who supported the rise of the game, someone who supported the national team as a whole when it comes to contract negotiations. She's just been a consummate leader and someone who was willing to put her career and her reputation on the line to defend at least what she thought was best for the team and what was best for some of the other players. In the past, national team players on the women's team would get paid more for the more games they played. So the senior players would sort of be quiet about bringing in younger players because at least they got to make more money, and they didn't make a lot of money on the club side playing for their domestic team. So it was sort of something where it was not commonly done, where she was very vocal about making sure that the people that came after her were put in a better position than she was. And that is, to me, just a true leader.
I mean, I always say, Megan has been on our show, and we've worked with her in the past, and she is just one of the most inspirational people. She's a hero in my mind for kneeling alongside with Colin Kaepernick, fighting for equal pay. She's just done so many things that inspired me individually, but inspired so many others. I mean, we hosted an event where in Charlotte with her, where she was on stage with us, and there were probably about, I don't know, 6,000 people there to just see her and supporting her.
Just kids crying, holding up signs.
Little girls that were like, "Can you give Megan this picture of her so that they just wanted us to give her artwork." I'm like, I don't even know.
Oh, I remember this young girl drew something, and she said it took her like a week, and she said, crying, "Could you give this to Megan Rapinoe?" And I said, "If you give me $50, I will." Get in your pocket.
What's in it for me? I don't need to hear any more about the tears. Let's talk tech.
How much do you really love Megan Rapinoe?
That's when her crying turned into sobbing at that point. Yeah.
So we're huge fans here for sure.
So Megan is she announced this is her last ride here. Alex Morgan and Kelly O'Hara are both on their fourth team, just like Megan Rapinoe, the fourth World Cup team or national team. So they haven't announced anything, at least to my knowledge. In your guys' mind, will this be their last appearance on the national team?
I don't
World
think
Cup.
so.
No, Alex Morgan. It feels like Alex Morgan's got at least one more World Cup in her.
Almost it does. I mean, and also she is in great form playing for San Diego. She's on a new team that's new.
Back home, she's from California.
Yeah, and it looks like she's having a great time on a great team as well. So I don't see Alex Morgan going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
And Kelly O'Hara as well. Gotham FC are now like in third place in on the table. They look great as well. So I don't.
Yeah. And if you guys are watching and you've never watched women's sports or women's soccer before, the easiest way to explain Alex Morgan is she's a bucket. She just scores. That's all she does. If you give her the ball, she's going to find a way to score. She makes other teams really nervous. Like typically you'll find two defenders on her. You'll find defenders worrying about where she is because she just knows how to score. She's got an eye for goal. It's incredible.
A walking bucket, spare tires. You guys have come in here and spoke our language the entire day. It is greatly appreciated. Stars and stripes all over on this side from here on out. Alexis, Christian, we can't thank you guys enough for the time. I'm sure and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you guys again during the World Cup and certainly beyond that. There's plenty of other things I'd love to pick your guys' brain on. So thank you so much. Everyone, make sure you check out the Cooligans and hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon, all right?
Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Honored to be on your show.
Honored. Cheers.
All right, time to finish this off with this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to finish off your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating. Let us know more of what you want to hear. And heavily food-based today. I've been left to my own devices, which means we're going to get kind of fat. But first, the never-ending saga of Victor Wembanyama and Britney Spears. We finally heard from Britney Spears. She posted a video on her social medias basically responding to some of the flack that she had gotten. Brittany made the mistake, and honestly, this is a big celebrities, they're just like us moment of reading the replies. In this case, she referenced coming from radio stations that she had heard saying that she deserved to get what she got in that interaction for running up on Big Vic in public, saying security was doing their job. I appreciated that Britney Spears pulled the y'all, I've been famous for a really long time card on everybody who had something to say. As she pointed out, I have been famous and around famous people for a long time. I have been in crowds of 12-year-olds throwing themselves at bands like NSYNC, and I've had security around me who has never once treated people that way. So it was a reminder that she's got the firsthand experience that I would buy on this, even as some people would look at Britney Spears and maybe not believe some of what she says at this point. That was a pretty well-timed flex. But she basically said she got the apology 30 minutes later inside the restaurant, says she wants one publicly, which is a reminder. This was all so avoidable and is all so impossibly dumb. All Victor Wembanyama and their camp had to do was go, apologize to Britney Spears, take the picture that she wanted in the first place, and then post that with an apology and saying, all's well, excited to get a little bit of American culture on my first trip into the States. Period. Done. I don't know why I'm so much better at PR than so many of these people, but if any of you want to pay me as a consultant, I am absolutely willing and able to assist. So we'll see if anything actually comes of that. I'd imagine not. This is probably going to peter out, and I think for the good of everyone involved. But again, very easy words, and I always say two, but it's technically three because it's a contraction. I am sorry. That's all you need to say. I am sorry. We wished it had gone differently. You said it in private. Just say it in public. We can all move on from this. Treat Britney Spears with the love and respect that we did not during her time as a pop star. Let's get to that and start with the food train here. Burger King in Thailand is going viral for a new sandwich that contains only bread and 20 slices of American cheese. You read that correctly. Dubbed the Real Cheeseburger, this new menu item consists of American cheese and the chain's signature sesame seed bun, sold for the produced price of 109 Thai baht, which is roughly $3.10, versus the regular cheeseburger that goes for about 380 baht. A bunch of TikTokers went over and started to videotape this. To me, this is indicative of one thing. Burger King is drunk with power after the Whopper, 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 BK, have it your way jingle slogan. They got into all of our brains. They clearly were successful. It said in the article that I read that Burger King's enjoying a good bump right now in their year-over-year earnings. And I'd imagine it's largely due to the fact that they came out with a banger of a jingle that everybody was using and everybody enjoyed. Really, I mean, McDonald's, thank God they had this whole Grimace season go, because they had really been operating from a disadvantaged position after BK figured out that jingle. And now they're drunk with power, and they've decided soft launch in Thailand this all cheese sandwich. And rest assured, it's not melted cheese. It's not anything like that. It is 20 dry slices of American cheese between two buns. That being said, would try. The stomach results would be devastating, but I would do that for the people. I would go and I would find my way into that. I'm not sure if there's a combination I would enjoy better. Like, I did a week eating at Arby's one time not a promotional thing with them. I flirted with Twitter enough to get them to buy me lunch for a week. And so I've put my stomach through the test, right? I have eaten the things so that you don't have to. I do a candy tasting series online because I'm an idiot for that same reason. And I always said, like, when I did that week at Arby's, I ate an off-menu item called Meat Mountain, which is every meat they have on the menu in one giant sandwich. I did that so you didn't have to. You shouldn't. I love Arby's, but you shouldn't eat that particular item. And I feel like none of these TikTokers here actually took the plunge. I saw them all pulling the sandwich apart, didn't actually take a bite. I'd be willing to go and probably ingest about half that sandwich before I got too sick to function, just so you wouldn't have to. Because listen, I know this is going to anger and sadden friend of the program, Spencer Hall, but I love cheese. And so I'm not afraid of that. The sliced American cheese that used to come out of the little plastic wrapper, the Kraft one, used to stuff that in my face as a kid all the time. So not afraid of that. Body's built different, but overall, this probably seems like an idea we need to get away from. But if anyone actually makes their way over to Thailand and tries this, at GoJo Show on Twitter, at Mike Golick Jr., I need an actual review. I don't trust a lot of these influencers. I need an actual review from someone who is boots on the ground getting after this thing. But let's get to the third. This is the real important business, because we have got to throw our support behind one of the more important groups of people that we have in this country. Employees at a Waffle House restaurant in Columbia, South Carolina went on strike this weekend, protesting poor and unsafe working conditions as well as low pay, according to the newly formed Union of Southern Service Workers. After workers delivered a petition to management last week asking for more support and fair scheduling and pay, as well as improved job safety, they claimed their concerns were not adequately addressed and subsequently went on a 3-day strike starting on Saturday. Employees described dangerous and threatening working conditions at the store, which is located in a city with one of the highest crime rates in America, with employees experiencing customers throwing cups of salt and sugar at them. One customer described a belligerent customer brandishing a knife at her, according to the Post and Courier. Waffle House employees are the backbone of this nation. We are pro-union in many ways around this show, and so obviously want to support them in their effort to get what they deserve. Because Waffle House should be a dangerous experience for the customers, not the employees. They got a job to do there. They should be cared for, appreciated, and protected in that process. Because as you know, going to Waffle House is an experience unlike any other. Seeing that glowing yellow sign in the distance off the side of the highway or in a college football town in the SEC is one of the great joys in my life. And I can speak for my father on that front too. If there's a Waffle House in our vicinity, we are going to find it. And part of that experience is knowing you're going to go in and get dinner at a show, knowing you're going to get people shouting, knowing you're going to get workers at the Waffle House talking way too loudly about inter-office politics in there in a way that you just got to sit back and take, because that's part of the experience at the Waffle House. But on the other side, because everyone can also tell you, if you've been to a Waffle House late night, you got a decent chance of seeing a fight, you got a decent chance of seeing something go down, that the workers need hazard pay for that. They need to be justly compensated and taken care of, because they are working in one of the more chaotic eating experiences that you can muster. And again, I'm fine if that's chaotic for the customer, because we're coming in and receiving goods and services for going in there. We are assuming that risk. Once you get your stuff smothered, covered, chunked, however you take your hash browns, that's essentially the waiver you sign, that whatever happens after this, we're going to kind of have to figure it out here. But the workers deserve better than that. I have always enjoyed my experiences with the Waffle House staff there. They make sure I get scalding hot black coffee, a pancake-like waffle, and butter-covered meat, eggs, and of course, the smothered, chunked, covered, however you take your hash browns, all safely and soundly. The least we can do as a nation that has benefited off the backs of the labor of these people is support them when it's their time. So I say this seriously. I support the Waffle House workers in getting every last dime and every last bit of protection that they deserve out there, and you should do the same. End of rant. We will have Dad back tomorrow to get our first update on what's going on out at Lake Tahoe. Hopefully we can track down Stu Gatz in the process. We'll see. I saw him and Mike Ryan out on the course. It looks beautiful there. They have conned everyone once again into sending them out there and paying for the trip. We'll get an update on that. And more. If you enjoyed this show, however, Solo GoJo, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us that 5-star rating. Check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel, as well as DraftKingsNetwork.com. And of course, Samsung TV Plus. Let them know, because Dad and Brandon aren't probably going to believe me when I said that this actually went all right. So we'll check that out. I am going to get ready after tomorrow's show to head to Tahoe. We'll have plenty of content from Boots on the Ground there as well. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Go. Boom. Money in the bank.